Hi, everyone, and welcome to our June website chat. Just a quick reminder here at the top of the hour that we will not have a July website chat. We always take the month of July off and we'll reconvene in August. So I really want to thank all of you for joining us for our June meeting, and those of you who are watching recording, I hope it'll be worthwhile. Looks like we have some nice weather around the state right now, but we're all anticipating some changes here in the next several hours as some winter weather systems move in, which is not unexpected this time of year. Really glad that you could be with us. Go ahead and feel free to rename yourselves. We always appreciate questions, so feel free to share your questions and comments in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand if you have things that you're wanting to go online and share with us that way. We want to make this as informative and interactive as possible. All right. So this is the agenda that we have on tap for us today. I'm going to give a brief update on the Institute of Museum and Library Services funding situation. And then a week ago, we had a long commission meeting. So we have quite a bit of news to update you with on the commission and some of their upcoming activities. Tracy has been working really hard on completing a legislative review and has some updates in particular on Senate Bill 542 that we want to bring to your attention. There's some exciting news about opportunities in partnership with Beanstack for our summer reading programs, and then our regular upcoming reminders. So thanks for being with us. Just talking about the Institute of Museum and Library Services, of course, things have been really up in the air since the middle of March, when an executive order called for IMLS to reduce their operations to what is minimally required in statute. Some of you will recall that a few state libraries lost their FY24 funding, only to have those dollars reinstated. We did get a partial award for FY25 that we received in kind of middle of May. The really good news is just this week we received our official award notification for our full FY25 award from IMLS. That's about $1.4 million. Those are the dollars that we will start spending on July 1 in state fiscal year 2026. And as a reminder, those are the dollars that fund things like our fantastic consulting and continuing education and learning teams. They provide funding for the Montana Shared Catalog, Montana Library to Go, our OCLC contract, the Montana History Portal, Talking Book Services, and others. So we're just really, really grateful that we have that money available to us now. Sorry, I just got a patch notice on my computer, of course, coming in the middle of everything. There we go. We'll dismiss that. The other thing that has happened in regard to IMLS this past week, the Government Accounting Office determined that IMLS must award funds appropriated by Congress. And so that reinforces the information we have received from IMLS, both in terms of the FY24 and FY25 dollars. Those dollars were appropriated by Congress most recently in the continuing resolution that Congress passed in middle of March. And so that determination gives us good confidence for the rest of this fiscal year that unless Congress were to act in some way, the Trump administration cannot come in and rescind those dollars that have now been awarded to us. So yet another sign that we can feel confident that we have the dollars we have going into this next fiscal year. There have been a couple of different legal proceedings with regard to actions against IMLS. The one that is moving forward is one that was brought by about 21 states attorneys general. And under that court order, IMLS is essentially being directed to proceed under their normal statutes, including distributing funds and then bringing staff back. So most of the IMLS staff who were originally put on administrative leave are now back in the office. Some of their staff who worked remotely in places around the country chose to find other work opportunities, but nearly all who are in the DC area are now back and working at IMLS, including our program officer, Dennis Nangle, who some of you have had the opportunity to meet over the years. So where things are right now, the Trump administration's budget calls for the defunding of IMLS. They have appropriated about $6 million for the quote orderly closing of IMLS. That's not new information. That was very much anticipated. President Trump in his first term also called for the defunding of IMLS. So really things are in the hands of Congress as Congress is working to negotiate the reconciliation bill, which is the reconciliation between the House and the Senate on a final FY26 budget. They will be the ones to ultimately determine what funds would be appropriated to IMLS for their continued operations. At this point, it's sort of anyone's guess when we will know what kind of budget is passed. The fiscal year for the feds will start in October, but as we've seen as recently as this year, Congress hasn't actually appropriated those funds until sometimes February, March, even as late as April in some years. So at this point, we're really in a waiting game to know when we will know more information about the future of the IMLS budget into this next fiscal year. That's where we're really focusing our attention. I'm reaching out and communicating with our congressional offices about the importance of IMLS funding and what we are hearing about the status of that funding. Some of you have heard me say that the Museum and Library Services Act is due to be reauthorized. That's the authorizing federal legislation for IMLS, and the current authorization expires this fall. Initially, we were planning to seek reauthorization, but in this tumultuous time, colleagues within the library profession around the country feel like it's maybe not a good idea to draw a lot of direct attention to that legislation. And importantly, IMLS does not need that authorizing legislation to operate. It's really the funding appropriation from Congress that is necessary for them to continue to award funds. We've seen agencies like the National Endowment for the Humanities and the National Endowment for the Arts that haven't had authorizing legislation literally in years and years. And so we know that IMLS can continue to operate even if the Museum and Library Services Act expires. And we would rather let it expire, continue to work on funding appropriations through Congress, and pursue that legislation at a time that is more conducive to a positive outcome. We would hate to carry forward legislation only to have it killed or vetoed by the president. So that's sort of the status of IMLS and the thinking behind our strategies to advocate for funding and the future of the Museum and Library Services Act at this point in time. It is certainly possible that someone could include authorizing legislation in an omnibus budget bill. If you follow the workings of Congress, you know that Congress will often pass major spending bills that also include a variety of different kinds of legislation in what's called an omnibus bill. And so it's not unlikely that something like that could happen rather than a separate appropriation for the Museum and Library Services Act. I think the other thing I wanted to mention as I think about the work in Congress, through the appropriations process, when you have the House and the Senate appropriation committees meeting to negotiate what that budget bill looks like, members of Congress who are not on those committees will sign what are called Dear Appropriator letters. which are essentially signaling to the appropriations committees what their budget priorities are. And so there are always letters in both the House and Senate calling on those appropriation committees to continue to fund IMLS. And in this year, we saw more members of the Senate and more members of the House signing on to those Dear Appropriator letters, signaling a greater level of support from IMLS in Congress than we've seen in past years. So that is encouraging as we look to the work of Congress. Any questions, comments, concerns? Are you hearing anything in your community? I just want to remind you all, if you're getting any questions about what the loss of federal funds might mean or what programs are funded by federal dollars, we do have a link on our homepage to our federal library funds at work. So that's good information for you to share with anyone who may be asking. And then you've probably by now seen some information on various web applications like the shared catalog and the history portal and others that call attention to the fact that those services are funded by those federal dollars. Okay. So like I said, we had a really busy commission meeting last Friday, about a 6.5 hour long meeting. A couple of just brief commissioner updates. The June meeting is always when our commission elects their officers, and Robin has again been elected to continue as chair, and Tom Burnett will continue as the vice chair. And then Tammy Hall's 3-year term was up for renewal, and she was reappointed to the commission. And I think I just checked my email. It looks like Brian Rossman has also been reappointed as the Commissioner of Higher Ed appointee. So that was a last minute addition that I didn't get on these slides. So that sort of continues the status of the commission membership at this point. June is always the meeting where the commission takes action on the Federation plans of service, and Trace is there to present the plans of service that were approved by all of the federations earlier this spring. Good discussion around those plans of service. One thing I wanted to bring to your attention is a request for more information specifically around trustee involvement and engagement. The commission is interested in knowing how many trustees are attending those meetings and some of the impact of the funding that the commission has earmarked for trustee training. So Tracy is going to make sure that our Federation coordinators are alerted to that information to help with the reporting that is going on right now for the FY25 Federation dollars. And that information will be included in the Federation reports that go to the Commission in October. We've talked a little bit about the fact that one of the Commission's goals this year is focused on continuing to enhance the certification and the continuing education program. There's a subcommittee of the Commission that Tracy and Colette are leading that includes Carmen Cuthbertson and Tammy Hall and McKenna Gregg, who's the Superintendent of Public Instruction designee. At this last meeting, they heard from a panel of representatives from the Office of Public Instruction and the Board of Public Education about how those agencies administer the licensure and professional development programs for teachers in Montana. There are a lot of parallels there. And it was, I think, helpful for the commission to hear some of the similarities and differences in how those programs are administered. Our subcommittee will meet again to start to, I think, put forward some recommendations. Some of the areas that they are focused on are looking at how providers of continuing education are approved or verified. We know that the Office of Public Instruction has a process for continuing education providers to be approved. That was something that the commission heard about. So I think that that's something that our commission may be interested in. They're also interested in looking at sort of a foundational set of courses that library staff or librarians might take in order to receive their certification. And then they're asking questions about the process for individual continuing education courses to qualify for CE credit for librarians. So lots of questions to answer as they explore those different kinds of opportunities. A lot of what might happen in next steps would include updates to administrative rules. The commission also heard from the Board of Public Ed about how they rely on administrative rules to inform and guide the decision-making process that goes into the licensure and professional development programs. And we know that much of our work is already described in administrative rule, and any changes would involve either creating new or revising existing administrative rules. So this is going to be sort of a multi-step process as they explore different opportunities to continue to enhance those programs that we offer. Tracy, I wanted to invite you to provide any additional information or insights that you think might be important.
I think your summary was excellent. I guess I would encourage, I have had a couple library directors reach out and ask about should they express any questions or concerns they might have or things they would like the commission and the committee to think about when they're making their decisions. And I would definitely encourage you to do that. You're welcome to just send them to me, or obviously you can use the public comment process of the commission. But if there's something you would like the committee to think about or the commission to consider as they're reviewing all of these questions, please don't hesitate to share that with us, because you are out there and you are working in libraries and you are the directors who have this experience. And so I think it's important for you to share any insights that you think might be relevant to the conversation.
Great point, Tracy. Thanks for raising that point. And as always, we really encourage you to pay attention to the work of the commission and to share your expertise with them. Another matter that the commission heard was revisions to our trustee manual. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the 2-volume opus that was intended to guide the work of trustees. And we had received feedback from commissioners and others about sort of kind of the overwhelming nature of the information that was provided, and some guidance on trying to make that information more accessible through a revised and shortened trustee manual. And so the commission had a chance to review that. It is shorter, and as Tracy described to the commission, it's really intended to give trustees a lens into what their work looks like from day one. What do they really need to know to hit the ground running? The one piece of feedback that we received was that it could be even shorter in the form of a quick start guide. Like if a trustee is starting, really what do you want to hand them to help them feel successful at their first meeting, in their first experiences as a trustee? So that will be the next step, the next iteration in the evolution of our trustee manual. And I was even saying to staff, I think we need to do the same thing for the State Library Commission's handbook and manual. We too have a very lengthy orientation manual for members of the commission. I think it could benefit from a quick start guide. So look for that to come as well. There is another subcommittee of the commission. Again, one of their goals was to look at how we award our Excellent Library Services Award. So there's a subcommittee including Carmen Cuthbertson and Tom Burnett and Brian Rossman, looking at our current Excellent Library Services Award and considering how they might improve that award. That subcommittee was initially focused on looking at the public library statistics and trying to tease out what measures of excellence they might be able to identify looking at the library survey. Ultimately, they weren't really satisfied that they were able to identify what they would consider excellence from that kind of information. So at this meeting, we had a conversation about the value of the Excellent Library Services Award. Those of you who have applied for it over the years know that it's really been intended to encourage libraries to strive for excellence under the public library standards. In previous iterations, it was intended to recognize those libraries that were participating in interlibrary loan through OCLC and sharing their records through WorldCat. So it's been a way for us to encourage and incentivize certain kinds of practices amongst libraries. This past year, we had around 30 applicants for the awards, so not quite, or a little, I guess I should say a little bit more than 30% of libraries applied for the award, and anyone who applied for the award really got the award. In the end, where that subcommittee has landed is they feel like perhaps the Excellent Library Services Award in its current form has run its course, and they don't really have a recommendation for how to improve or reshape that award. So the commission will consider an action item at their August meeting to retire the award in its current form. So that's the status of that activity. Again, as Tracy said, if you have thoughts or feedback about the award or what excellence looks like and how it might be recognized, the August meeting will be an opportunity for you to share those comments with the commission. The commission also had a discussion about our open library hours standard. Commissioner Tom Burnett brought to the commission a recommendation that was sort of two parts. One was that we redefine the standard based on like an annual average or an annual number of hours opened rather than the weekly requirement that's currently in the standard and administrative rules, and also a recommendation that the number of open hours be reduced by 30%. And his reasoning is sort of twofold. One, the reason for changing the reporting from a weekly reporting to an annual reporting is it's more in keeping with how we report for the public library survey. And also it would allow libraries to take into account weeks where they might not see a lot of visitation in a library and might appreciate having the flexibility to be open or closed depending on that kind of usage. Other discussions centered around perhaps reducing the number of open hours would give libraries more budget flexibility to redirect dollars from being open to providing things like more online or ebook kinds of services where we're seeing increased usage. This is a discussion that would definitely require an administrative rules change, because this change is in the public library standards and administrative rule. So at the August meeting, the commission will consider action on whether to open that administrative rule and begin the process of revising that standard. That process is typically about a 3-meeting process. The first one where they take action to open that rule and to recommend a revision to the standard. And then there's a process of them having to take public comment. The administrative rules process involves posting to the Montana Administrative Register and seek public comment. And so the commission then would hear and receive that public comment and have to respond to that public comment, and then make any revisions to what they are proposing based on those public comments. And then ultimately, typically a third meeting where they adopt a final rules change if they choose to adopt that rule. So again, I want to draw this discussion to your attention and invite you to the August meeting to share any comments that you might have and to be aware of these considerations as the commission is moving forward. The commission views this as an opportunity to offer some flexibility to libraries. They wouldn't necessarily have to reduce their hours, but reducing the hours and the standards would give libraries the flexibility to potentially redirect dollars within their budgets to serve their communities in different ways. And then finally, I shared a federal funding update. Much of it was around our IMLS funding, which I've already shared with you. The state library also receives grants and contracts, particularly in support of our natural resource information system, funding from federal agencies like the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service and the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And similarly with our IMLS funds, we've made it through this fiscal year with our grant and contract funds in place. And I'm very pleased that we are renewing those agreements and hearing good support from all of those federal agencies for future funding. So I feel confident that we'll have those dollars going into the next fiscal year as well. I'm gonna pause there again and ask if there's any questions or discussion feedback from the commission meeting.
All right. So I sent an email to the public library directors about this, but I asked Jenny if I could take a few minutes to talk about this during the website chat. I think a lot of you know that the legislature really wanted to work on property tax laws this year. And there were a number of bills that went through the legislative session. Some died in the process, and then some, of course, made it to the end. And they revised property tax laws in a variety of different ways. And as Jenny said, I am working on a legislative summary to share with you. I took the opportunity to attend a municipal summit in Great Falls this last week, where they did a really excellent job of describing some of the key bills that we need to be aware of. Senate Bill 542, which generally revises property tax laws, is huge, and it has multiple pieces, and it impacts the tax rate for different classes of property. This is the bill that I've seen at least a couple newspaper articles about it. It kind of talks about the increase in tax rates for second homes or for homes that are valued over 1.4 million. But the key thing that I needed to let you know about is that if your library has what's called a dedicated voted levy, that means that at some point in your library's history, the community voted to tax itself for library services. And that levy asked people to vote for something like 7 mills and approximately $200,000 or whatever that would be in your community. You have an important decision that needs to be made. And it's not just the library, it's any local government entity that has a voted levy like this has to make this decision. And basically, the decision is to switch to what's called a dollar-based mill levy. And so that means that you are saying we're going to get that 200,000 plus any future inflationary rates. Or you can decide to continue with the 7 mills, and you'll get that in fiscal year 2026, and then that's it. You have the 7 mills. In a conversation with the executive director of the Montana League of Cities and Towns, we really thought most communities are probably better off shifting to that dollar-based mill levy, because changes to the property tax laws gives local government entities inflation up to 4%, which is really very nice to have that. It used to be limited to half the rate of inflation. And so you would be getting kind of what you got this year plus inflationary rates over time. And we just suspect that this is a better option for most communities because it's very clean and easy to explain, and you get the inflationary rate. And there is some indication there may be a ballot initiative kind of freezing property tax values. And so having that dollar-based assures that you'll get that dollar amount plus that inflationary rate. So if you have any questions, of course, please reach out to me. It's totally okay if you're not sure if you have a dedicated voted levy. I've had a couple libraries reach out and we've worked through the paperwork to figure out what kind of funding that they have. This particular piece doesn't apply to general fund mills. So if your library just receives some general fund from your city or your county, then you don't need to worry about this. It's just for those of you who have that dedicated voted levy. Any questions about this? Okay. So I actually get to talk about the next thing too. Which is kind of fun for me. I actually thanked Bobby. Bobby is our lifelong learning librarian, and she developed a partnership with the Early Childhood Division of the Department of Public Health and Human Services. And she received a grant from them to do work focused on children 0 to 5. And so you'll be actually seeing a variety of things coming from Bobby around early literacy, but Beanstack can apply to that and to your summer reading program. And so Bobby was able to negotiate an incredible rate for Beanstack. It is a mobile app and an online reading tracker. And so it can be used for summer reading. It can be used for 1,000 books before kindergarten. You can also set up reading contests, and people can even kind of share and have reading challenges themselves. So there will be 2 trainings, June 23rd and June 24th, and just pick whichever one works the best for you. As you can see, that training will be worth 1 CE credit in technology, and the goal is to have everybody live on the web and with the Beanstack mobile app on June 30th. And so if you have any questions or you need anything, please contact Bobby. There are a couple of libraries who have been using Beanstack, and so they can also probably share their expertise as well. So please do reach out if you have any questions about this.
Cool. We got some good experience with Beanstack early on in the pandemic. And it's great to have the opportunity to continue that and to hopefully encourage more libraries to participate. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
All right. Some reminders. I saw another message from Bobby about micro grants for summer reading programs. Be sure and look for that information. And if you're interested, apply by June 30th. We're actively seeking your reports for the public library standards. That reporting deadline is July 25th. And then I mentioned we're also in the process of our Federation grant reporting period. So lots of reporting and opportunities to engage with us this summer. I did also want to mention we're sort of at fiscal year end, and so we're wrapping up our FY25 budget and also wrapping up some contract renewals and contract extensions at this point. And I think Sean Anderson, our grants and contracts coordinator, is with us here today. If you have any questions about any of those, we are in the process of renewing our OCLC group services contract, and staff are wrapping up a request for proposal process to enter into contract with a new courier. And that process is pretty close to being finalized. So if anybody has any questions about contracts, Sean's here with us today as well. As I said, feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat. Feel free to open up your mics and share with us that way as well. Lay, why don't we go ahead and we'll stop the recording and hang out for just a few more minutes?
Sure. Let me show the upcoming events really quick, just
Oh,
so
yes.
folks
Thank you
have
so
that
much.
in their minds as well and on their calendars. We have a great series with Chris Goss that we kicked off this last week. And so July is going to be all about legal topics, very timely. And so look for those things to come. We always appreciate hearing from you through our evaluation survey. It's one of the ways that we help know if we're on track or if we need to make course corrections. So please do fill out that evaluation survey. I'll drop the link in the chat here in just a second. And then if you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with us. And Jenny, and our next website chat is scheduled for August 15th. Please forgive us. Sometimes we have to pivot at the last minute. So checking that Aspen calendar, if there are changes to the dates, is important as we go through the summer. So with that, thanks so much. And you can look for this recording to be posted later today.
Thanks, Colleen.